Great. Thank you, Netta. Thank you, Netta, behind the scenes, getting us all organized and set up for today. She's our skills development officer in the Kelowna office, and she's got everything set up for us. So thank you, Netta. All right. So we are recording it. The recording will be made available to you and the public afterwards. So if you don't want to be shown on the screen, maybe just turn off your camera. And we also have previous webinars available on our website. So please check that out. Good morning, everybody. Netta, if you would mind advancing the slides. We're here for Up for Sale, How to Buy a Small Business in BC. So good morning, everybody. My name is Melanie Roop, and I'm the Senior Director of Loans and Advisory Services with WeBC. I'm pleased to be joining you from the traditional territories of the Musqueam and the Kwantlen Nations in Richmond, and I invite you to also share which traditional territories you are joining us from. And if you're not sure, Netta has put in a great website into the chat function called native-land.ca. And it's just grateful as we are coming up on the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation Friday. You know, we're all learning about the journey and the history of the people who have been here since time immemorial. And I'm really grateful that they are sharing their land with us and we can enjoy this beautiful land. Netta, next slide, please. So if you're not familiar with WeBC, we have a range of services, including our loan program. We have complimentary business advice to assist you at all stages of your journey. So if there are things today that you have specific questions about, certainly we'll have time for questions and answers from our panelists, but you can also make notes and schedule an appointment with a business advisor through our client services team, and we'll give you that email later on to get your specific questions and assistance. We also have other workshops like this, helping you develop the skills necessary to support you on your entrepreneurial journey. We also offer mentoring programs, peer mentoring programs and one-on-one mentoring programs, and a supportive community. You are not alone. It may be your business that you own yourself, but you are not alone. And you can be surrounded by support and services to help you on your entrepreneurial journey. And our vision is to see all women entrepreneurs contributing their full potential to the economy of BC and Canada. Yeah, so let's move on to the next one, please, Netta. Today we're talking about buying a business, and I just have a few slides here really to give some context and to get you thinking about different things. These slides will be available after the presentation, as will some other resources. So just thinking about buying a business, I mean, why would you want to buy a business versus starting your own business? And so these are just a few considerations to think about. That is your passions and interests. And when we think about having a business, we always go back to like Simon Sinek's, what's your why? Why are you passionate? Why are you doing this? Why does this matter to you? Why does the business matter to others? And when you dig really deep on the why, it connects you with why you're doing it. And if you haven't run a business before, whether you're starting a business or buying a business and then growing it from there, it's a lot of work, a lot of time and effort. And in some ways, people think having your own business means you work less, but most people find they work more. So you want to really be connected to your why, because that'll get you through the tough times. The focus and responsibilities, really think about, are you someone who enjoys starting something from scratch? So coming up with an idea, looking where there's a gap in the market, seeing that there's a demand for it and people willing to pay for that product or service, and you want to create that vision that you have and turn it into a business. And all of the startup activities, from finding the market, selling your product or service, tweaking it, and so on. So really all that work of building it from scratch. Or are you someone who sees a business and sees something and wants to maximize the business? So you want to take the business and take it to the next level. So often if you're buying a business, it already has the business model in place. You can see that business model and how it works. You can see the employees, you can see the suppliers and the vendors, you can see all of that, but you see how you can make it bigger and better and do something with that business that is in your own vision. When you think about the investment and the cash flow, do you have the resources that you can take a chunk of money or leverage your chunk of money with financing to purchase a business? There's a larger upfront cost. Or do you want to start smaller with a smaller investment and scale up from there? When you're buying a business, you're buying existing cash flow, rather than having to build that cash flow. And then lastly, thinking about the structure and the reputation. If you're building a business, you're defining the structure, the culture, you're building the reputation, you're building it all from scratch. When you're buying a business, those things are in place, and you have to consider how you would fit in with the structure, how you would fit in with the culture of the existing business, the existing employees, and then the reputation of the business, making sure is it aligned with your values. So just some things to think about whether you want to buy or start a business. Netta, next slide, please. So just generally some important considerations. Buy the right business for you. There's, with the aging, I just listened to the BDC chief economist, and he said there's more people over the age of 55 in Canada than there are people under the age of 24. So as we know, demographically, the population is aging. People are looking to retire, perhaps, although if you're over 55, you may want to buy a business and use that as your retirement. And that's also a very common theme that we see with entrepreneurs either starting or buying a business when they're over 50. So age doesn't matter, but I think it does mean that there's a lot of businesses out there that are potentially for sale. Here at WeBC, we provide financing for women wanting to start a business as well as purchase a business. And interesting, in the last 6 months, we've seen a higher number of women buying businesses than we have in the last couple of years. So it's definitely a trend where current owners are willing to sell, and there's people out there who are looking to buy those businesses. Knowing the value of the business. We'll come back to questions, but please pop your questions into the chat. Know the value of the business. And here we talk about your earnings before interest and taxes and depreciation and amortization. And I'll talk about that a bit more on the next slide. But it's really important when you're buying a business that you understand how to determine the value of the business, because that will be a key negotiation point with the seller. And we'll talk more about that with our panelists. Conduct thorough due diligence. Do your homework. So you will be signing something called a non-disclosure agreement or confidentiality agreement, so that once you're qualified as a purchaser, you'll be able to look at all the records and the books of the business, and you need to do your homework. And most of the times it's helpful to have an advisor or a couple advisors on your team. I think a question in the chat was about, is there help when you're buying a business or even selling a business? And working with advisors really important, because as the buyer or the seller, you can get very emotionally involved. And so having someone that doesn't have that emotion connection to the transaction is very helpful. Be sure that the company culture is a fit. I think, really looking at not just the numbers and the paperwork, but looking at the people in the business and looking at the culture and making sure that that's aligned. And then, as I've mentioned, working with good advisors. So let's go on to the next slide, please, Netta. And again, you'll get a copy of all these slides. So as you're making some notes, there'll be reminders for you to get the slides. Okay, talking about normalized EBITDA. EBITDA is a term you will hear, and it'll be a term that our panelists will talk about. It means earnings before taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And when you own a business, there's a lot of leeway in expenses you can claim. A lot of business owners like to show no profit so that they minimize the amount of tax that they pay. But when you're selling a business and you show no profit, well, that doesn't look very good for the purchaser. And so there's a process called normalizing EBITDA, and that is looking at the statement of income, generally, depending on the age of the business, generally the previous 5 years, where you look at the revenues, the cost of goods, and your fixed expenses to calculate income. That will be shown on the income statements. But then you do a second step, which is to normalize EBITDA. And that is to look at the income statements of income again, and review it. What are management wages? What is the travel? Are there any other expenses on there that would not be within a normal expense range? So the management wages may be inflated or underinflated. The manager may have worked in the business or hired employees, but you're going to work in the business. So really thinking about those statements of income and what the current situation is and shown on the financial statements and how you would operate the business. So that's also an area where you might want to work with a business advisor here or another advisor. They can help you go through those numbers and just ask the questions. And it takes an amount of time and a good knowledge of Excel and working with the spreadsheet. So if that's not your forte, be sure to get help with that. And also other considerations. What's your budget? I mean, the price of businesses range from, I've seen them, $20,000 or $10,000 for a very small business up into the millions. And so thinking about your budget, thinking about what money you have, so that would be your equity that you're investing in the business, and what are your financing options. So sometimes the vendor will allow you to pay a portion of it over time. As I mentioned, WeBC provides financing up to $150,000 for the purchase of a business, or you can do much less than $150,000. You can look at banks and other financiers. So range of financing options. And just doing your homework and understanding the business and the cash flows can help you see that perhaps financing the business through the existing cash flow of the business, you're able to make the loan payments. You don't have to use all of your own money. You can keep your own money in the bank, save it as that little stash for things like COVID and other unforeseen circumstances, and leverage the money that you have and use other people's monies. Considering also your past business experience, your financial capacity statement, and then the signing of non-disclosure agreements. So a purchaser is going to look at you. Remember, you're buying their baby. And so they want to see that the new owner is going to come in and be a good owner for the existing operations, the employees. So they'll want to see, you know, how are you a fit for this business? Do you have the financial capacity in order to buy the business? Because they don't want to spend a lot of time with you if you can't demonstrate that you have a budget, that you can complete the sale if all the conversations go, you know, sort of well, let's say. And then the non-disclosure agreement. So there's a lot of nitty-gritty details that you'll get into, and the owner wants to know, the seller, that you are not allowed to share those. Anything that you learn, you're not allowed to share. So let's carry on to the next. And lastly, this is the last slide, and then we're going to go into the panel discussion, which is where to find a business. So sometimes you might just see a business that you like, you know, ask the owner. In a good way is to say to them, you know, and maybe you already have a relationship with them, is to say, you know, if you're ever thinking of selling the business, let me know, because I'd really, you know, be interested. And it kind of plants the seed. Sometimes there's a little sign in the window that might be for sale. And there's also, of course, websites. So ventureconnect.ca is actually run by Community Futures in rural communities, and showing businesses for sale there. And I see it's also listed under BC Business Match. It all gets to the same place. There are certified business brokers that list businesses for sale. So some people go to and use a business broker. You'll find listings on their website, and you can find a list of those brokers through IBBA Canada. And then other websites, and you just, you know, may find them on your own. I didn't list all of them because there are hundreds of them, I think, and there's some are BC and some not. One is Biz Buy Sell, recognizing some of those will be for profit, and so you have to kind of, you know, have your spidey senses on when you go to those sites. And Kijiji and Craigslist, and interesting, when I was preparing for this, I went on to, I think it was Craigslist, and I found one of our clients has their business for sale on Craigslist. So all kinds of places, and then just asking around. All right, let's jump in now to our welcome our panelists, because this is the good part of the session. And I really want you to kind of remember all the things that I've just gone over quickly, because they will come up as part of the conversation. I am pleased to welcome Tandy Williams, who is the owner of Island Girl Collective, and she is the purchaser of a business. And Pauline Stevenson is president of Excel Career College, and she recently sold her business. So we'll get both points of view to share today. So let's move along and into the questions. So Tandy and Pauline, I'll have you say hello to start.
Hello, everyone. Nice to gather with you here virtually and share, you know, our experience of late. So
great. Thank you. And Pauline. Oh, you're on mute.
Let's try this again. Hi, I'm Pauline Stevenson, and I'm very happy to be joining you here today. And I look forward to the conversation that's about to take place. Thank you very much, Melanie.
Okay, great. Thank you both for being here. So let's just jump right in. Tandy, I'll have you start by telling us the story of how you came to buy your business.
Okay, so Island Girl Collective is a small clothing store on Pender Island. I had just bought a property there just for vacationing, you know, change the scenery during COVID. And on the way to the grocery store, I saw a cute little store, the only clothing store on Pender Island, with a for sale sign in the window. And thought to myself, wouldn't that be so funny if I bought this business? So just to let you know why it was funny is because I had a very consuming full-time job, full social calendar, really no time to be starting a business at all. But sometimes that nagging entrepreneurial spirit won't stay quiet. And I, much like Melanie had mentioned, I just went in and started talking to the business owner. I quickly learned during discussions that this was within reach for me. I did not have a lot of retail experience. My background was in the military and then working for the provincial government. But I thought it would be such a challenge to see how I could take this business and grow it into something else. So that's my story.
It's a great story. Thank you, Tandy. And Pauline, please, can you tell us a story about how you came to sell your business?
Thank you, Melanie. It was after 32 years in business, and very much like Tandy's experience, I was approached, and that's how the conversation started. It was a great fit, so it moved along easily and quickly, and it's been a year thus far. So it brings us up to today.
Great. That's great. Amazing. Thank you. Okay, so we talked a little bit about valuation. So let's start there. About valuing the business is often tricky. And as we talked about, it's difficult to separate the personal and the business expenses. To each of you, how did you arrive at the final price for the business? Maybe we'll start with Pauline.
Melanie, I had been looking at my EBITDA year after year because I think that's really important as a business owner. As the company grows, you need to grow with it. So I became more comfortable with the value of my business. And when it came time to have that conversation, I had a number in my mind that EBITDA supported, that I would feel comfortable. I'd be happy to leave the business, and I'd feel like it was a fair transaction. So if I had spent more time, I might have looked at different multiples, but this was it was a really comfortable place to start the conversation.
Great. You bring up the concept of multiples. So we talked about calculating the normalized EBITDA, but then there's a multiple which can range anywhere from probably 1 times normalized EBITDA to 10x, so 10 times plus and beyond.
Right.
And so how did you come up with that multiple that you were comfortable with?
Me?
Yeah, Pauline, yeah.
Well, again, it came down to where I was at in my career and what my ultimate goal was. So the multiple that I came up with was a pretty low multiple. But if this transaction was going to complete in a simplistic, expedited way, and I was going to continue with the next chapter of the college, all my check boxes about what I personally valued in transitioning, all of my boxes were checked. My staff were going to be retained and valued. The company culture was going to be maintained, and I had a really exciting, they proposed a very exciting chapter for me to sign on as president during a big expansion plan.
Wow, great. Awesome. Great. And Tandy, what was your experience in arriving at the final price?
Well, essentially, this was a sole proprietorship, and the previous owner was very difficult. It was very difficult to separate the previous owner from the actual business and see the true value of the business. I saw very quickly in the beginning part of the process. I mean, I was happy with the number she had suggested, but after asking a few questions, it became clear to me that because, like Melanie mentioned, often business owners want to report lower profits for tax purposes, it was going to be challenging for me to get a true sense of what the business was worth. I had a connection with WeBC and thought that I needed to call in some help so that I was, better informed. And I spoke with a business analyst there who assisted me in completing a valuation, and really just gave me some good speaking points to go back to the seller and have a real in-depth conversation about, the true value and the right questions that I needed to ask so that I could better understand the business. It ended up that the business was not worth what she was asking for it. And that's fine, because I don't think she truly understood the calculation that needed to happen in order, she just knew what dollar value she needed to feel good about walking away from her business. I was able to have a conversation with her, armed with the information I got from the business analyst, and really look at, this is truly what it's worth. The numbers don't lie, right? And ask her, unless you can show me something else, this is going to be my new offer. And because we had that conversation, we were still able to proceed with the transaction.
That's great. And for both of you, and I'll let you, whoever wants to speak first, is just tell us about the due diligence process and the transaction closing process from your perspective.
Do you want to go ahead? Go ahead, Pauline.
The due diligence process is definitely an uncomfortable section of this transaction. And I'd had some experience with that in the past, so I was prepared for the due diligence process. However, it's really difficult to feel like you're defending something that is so important to you. It is incredibly important to do it to the best of your ability and to not try and shove anything under the rug. Keep it all above board and above the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good points.
Yeah, I have to agree that it's a challenging process. Like Pauline said, that's someone's baby that you're trying to purchase. And essentially, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears have gone into it. And scrutinizing that can be, it can bring a lot up to the surface for that person, and just being alive to the fact that due diligence is required. You absolutely must do it for your protection and for their protection. But doing it with a bit of sensitivity, I found was very helpful.
Yeah, and did either of you work with advisors and professionals? And if so, where in the process did they help you, and how did they help you?
Certainly. So the business analyst from WeBC was probably the most helpful. The rest of it was pretty easy, an accountant to look at the numbers, as well as, a lawyer to help not broker the deal, but finalize the deal and make sure all the I's were dotted and T's were crossed. So yeah, that was it. But ultimately, the advice from the business analyst was the most helpful for me.
I didn't have a business analyst, but we definitely used an accountant, and it was the company's accountant that has known the business for decades, as well as the corporate lawyer. The purchaser also had her own team, so that she had it interpreted from her own advisors. And I think that was really wise on her part. And it made that discomfort, that uncomfortable situation much more palatable, because the professionals talked to the professionals and they were unemotional, so they would be able to present it more factually based.
And out of curiosity, we didn't talk about it in the presentation, but buying and selling assets or shares? So the actual company structure. What was it in your case, Pauline?
It was a share sale,
Okay.
which it's quite a lot. Yeah, so I don't think I would ever want to take on a share sale without some professional support.
Because when you buy the shares, you're buying all the assets, but as well as the liabilities and obligations, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Candy, in your case, share sale or asset sale?
Asset sale, yeah.
Okay. So in your case, you were just buying the assets of the business and but not taking on the liabilities.
That's right.
Right. And was there a lease? I saw a question in the chat. Was there a lease that you needed to switch over?
There was a lease that I needed to switch over, and that was actually that was really the important piece. That's the one location that was available. I needed the location more than I needed her inventory or her assets or anything of that nature. I needed her to vacate the spot and sort of give it up, which is why I ended up having to purchase the business from her.
Yes, yeah. And Pauline, so if it's a share purchase, they are able to take over the lease?
Well, the shareholders' names change, so we did need to negotiate and have approval from the landlord. But it was just a technicality. It was pretty easy.
Great. Okay. And after the completion of the sale, was there any post-closing vendor support? What happened in your case, Pauline? You mentioned earlier what happened. Tell us more.
Well, I signed a 3-year contract, employment contract with, and I've said this before, but it was one of the most satisfying moments of my life, and I had never anticipated it, but signing an employment contract with the company I started 32 years prior was like just this it felt very much like I got a gold star on my head.
Amazing. That's great. And Tandy, any better support?
Yeah, so the seller did end up she expressed an interest in continuing to work at the store, which was great because, like I said, I had a full-time job and no time to be working in a store, which left me able to, take care of the management side of it, the curating the collection and so on and so forth. So she worked with me for just about 6 months, which was great. And then she moved on because she wanted to focus on her jewelry business. So yeah, we're still friends today.
Beautiful. Great. Both great, wonderful stories. I hope all transactions work out as beautifully as both of those stories. The key question from a financing point of view, did either of you use external financing or did you self-finance it?
Sorry, go ahead, Pauline.
No, you go ahead, Tandy.
Okay, so I self-financed. I purchased it on my own, and I didn't even, the business has been going for a year and a bit now, and it's been able to operate just on the capital that I put in initially. I recently incorporated the business and it's thriving, so that's great. I would say though that maybe I could have looked a little closer at financing options, because why tie up my funds if I don't actually have to, right? So that's just something that I might consider. Hindsight is 2020. So
yeah, I would just say it takes time. From our point of view, applying for a loan, depending if you have everything in order, it can be sort of 3 weeks, but it can also be 4 to 6 weeks or more.
yeah.
So I think thinking in advance, how can I leverage, and just even talking to a business advisor here about our loan program and what you might need. Yeah. How about in your case, Pauline?
The purchasers had their own purchasing plan. and I wasn't even privy to everything. They presented a complete buyout with, of course, a holdback. I don't know if you want me to describe that at all, but
What's a holdback?
a holdback is a part of the purchase price that is held in trust at the lawyer's office, so that in a year's time, in my case, it was 6 months. In 6 months' time, if there are no unforeseen issues or debts that come to present themselves, that money is there for a security.
That's very smart. I'm going to tell a story about that. Tandy, was that as part of did you have any holdback?
Yes, I did also have a holdback, and there was a portion, it was 4 months was the holdback. And there was also a portion that was left sort of variable for the actual inventory. So it gave me an opportunity to go through the inventory with the seller, determine what it is I wanted to take and what I didn't want to take. And then that final number was arrived at together, and we just presented the information to the lawyer, and then he released the funds accordingly.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good. That's smart. I know of an instance where a woman bought a business, and as part of the service to clients that was delivered by the initial owner, there was a lifetime guarantee. And so the subsequent owner was finding she was having to provide services that were paid to the previous, and she got no compensation for this lifetime guarantee, and it was a real hardship. So that holdback is good, and really, understanding those parts of the business. Okay, great. Last two questions. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs interested in buying a business?
I'd love to start with this one, Melanie, if I may. I have such a happy story to talk about the transition and how I get to end my career. But I have to tell you that during that 32 years prior to meeting the new owners, it was very vague and very stressful, knowing that I'm building and I'm investing really my entire career with the anticipation and hope that it's going to sell. So think about what that process is going to look like, and selling is not necessarily as quick and easy as selling a car. It can be a really long, and in my case, it was a accredited college. How many people are shopping to buy an accredited college? So the purchase pool was pretty small. I think that's a really important consideration is, are you willing to be a business owner until you reach that exit strategy and can execute on it?
That's an excellent point, Pauline. Absolutely. I mean, it's one that I had to consider myself, going into this, like, just how far do I want to go with this? I want to see how I can grow it, but I gave myself a timeline of 5 years, right? And at that point, there's a decision to be made. Either I'm selling, I'm franchising, something's happened. I'm just folding everything up and dissolving. So there's always that. The exit strategy is really important. So I would also say that the due diligence piece is really important. And like Pauline mentioned, and I'm sure you heard in my story, it's a bit sticky, right? There's a lot of questions that need to be asked. And sometimes there's a discomfort we feel to ask those questions of another person about something that they hold so near and dear. Just know that at those times, I think it's important you stand in your power and you absolutely do ask those questions, because to make good business decisions, you have to ask good questions, right? And if the seller is, you upfront, transparent, so on and so forth. It speaks volumes about the actual business entity that you're purchasing, right? So it can help bring a little bit of ease there as well. So due diligence, due diligence, due diligence.
Good advice. Good advice. All right. I'd like to open it up for questions, and we've got a lot of questions in the chat. So let's start there, and then we can open up the floor, because the stories have just been great, and I think so helpful to see real world examples of buying and selling a business. So let's start here. Any support to help people selling a business? And I saw a couple of questions there. I mean, yeah, this is a little bit of both, but really trying to focus it on buying a business. I think we can certainly do one on selling a business, where the focus is on that. So thank you for that suggestion. And if anyone is interested in selling a business, by all means, contact us and ask to speak to a business advisor, because we can point you with some resources. Hi, Tandy, did you say it was a business analyst? So it's a business advisor that helped you with the offer?
Advisor.
No problem. Offer, valuation, and speaking points. So can you maybe describe a little bit more about the support you received from the business advisor?
Certainly. So what I received was some financial statements from the seller. I then took those to my accountant, and my accountant, who's just looking at numbers, was like, Tandy, this is a no. Like, there's nothing here. There's nothing, you're buying nothing, essentially, is what he was saying. And when I really still wanted to continue, when I spoke to the business advisor, she did a more in-depth look at it by using the normalized
EBITDA. Yeah.
EBITDA. That's right. And she asked me to ask a few questions of about the expenses, about like some specific expenses that were listed, about other earnings that perhaps were not reported, and so on and so forth. And through those conversations, I learned a great deal more about, I guess, hidden value in the business that the seller was intentionally concealing, essentially.
Great. And then did you work with our spreadsheet, the simple business valuation, or?
Yes, I did. And
okay.
That's what we worked with the spreadsheet together, and that's what we went through. The other thing that was really, really helpful with the business advisor was really just a good gut check. And I had a list of to-dos that I wanted to, like getting insurance, getting WorkSafe set up, so on and so forth, just in case I did have an employee or whatever the case was. And it was really good to have someone who also had a list and said, did you think about this? Did you think about that? I ended up watching one of your webinars as well that was about buying a business, about starting a business, pardon me. Mm-hmm. And that as well gave me a few additional ideas to make sure that I was ticking all of the boxes as I continued on the process.
Great. Okay. So in the slide deck that we give you, there is a few questions, just, 6 or 8 questions that just give you some thoughts, but, and we'll also include a copy of the spreadsheet. And then if you need help working with the spreadsheet, then you can contact us and ask for a referral to a business advisor to help you go through the spreadsheet. So happy to do that. Question here on the lease on the premise. So I think we covered that already, where you always have to, if there is a lease, you have to get that lease switched over into the land with the landlord, and it is the landlord's prerogative to say yay or nay to you. So you have to sell yourself to the purchaser as well as to the landlord. Like Christine's message, amazing, Pauline, CEO goals for sure. Selling your business and signing as an employee. Sherry says, I've been helping people buy and sell businesses, especially women-owned, is my passion. And the greatest challenge I find is getting the landlord's approval. And it's very different with each landlord and very different based on the type of lease. So that's great information, Sherry. It's not a simple process. And just being aware of that and being prepared to work with the landlord. And Sherry, I don't know if you have any advice on some tips on how to work with the landlord to get that lease signed over. Elizabeth says, the sole proprietor business I'm interested in is on a month-to-month lease, but the business has occupied the space for 6 years. The owner is mentioning goodwill and the business is very good. Yeah, any comments from the panelists? They're a month-to-month lease and they've been there for 6 years and the owner is mentioning goodwill and the business is very good.
I think that it begs the question, is it movable? Is there an alternate space for about the same price? Because that's pretty insecure. You don't have that relationship and you haven't had it for the past 6 years. So it's a variable and such an unknown. And space can be everything. Like in Tandy's case, without the space, she doesn't have a business. So yeah, I'd check that. I'd go deeper.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so many unknowns when you're starting a business or buying a business, right? And I think taking care of the base of the hierarchy of needs there is probably a good way to go in terms of having, you have a fixed location rather than that variability of month to month. That's my personal opinion anyways.
I agree.
Yeah, from a business financing point of view, if you came to WeBC with a month-to-month lease, we offer 5-year term loans, and we do look to see that you have that space secured for the term of the loan, so that you're not having to move the business in during the term of the loan, because that can be very disruptive. So may negatively impact your ability to get financing. Sherry?
Yeah, thanks, Melanie. I just wanted to mention that one of the challenges that I find when I'm working with sellers of businesses, as well as buyers, but mostly on the seller side, is that sellers are often reluctant to renegotiate long-term leases as they're starting to wind down their business. But in fact, not doing that devalues the value of the business. So you should never be afraid of negotiating a regular term lease if you're choosing to sell your business. If you're just going to close it down and finish it off, then of course you don't want to renegotiate a long-term lease. But if you're thinking about selling it, then it doesn't do you any favors to not have a really good, solid lease in place with an extended term if possible. People, on the buyer side as well, right? Like you're looking to buy stability. Yeah,
great advice. Great advice. Thank you for that information, Sherry. Okay, quite a few questions, so I'm going to keep going here. Mignon is asking, can one buy a business through a regular real estate agent? No real estate involved.
I can answer that since I am one.
Okay, great.
So the rules in British Columbia are that if the business sale is going to include the taking over of a lease or any land or any sort of real estate, then it is required to be done either directly through a lawyer or with a real estate agent. And the way that the commission structure works, for people that are curious, in a case where you're working with a real estate agent, is the seller always pays the commission. So the seller pays the commission and the buyer's agent receives a share of the seller's commission, agent's commission. So there's no cost to a buyer. There's a cost to the seller.
Great. Thank you, Sherry. Yes, and I can confirm we had a loan client who applied and was through a real estate agent, but they were on leased land and the business was just, the business operations was selling. Another question also from Mignon is it necessary to pay a lawyer $5,000 plus to do due diligence, or are there other ways? I was quoted $5,000 plus to have it done. Any comment? Pauline, Tandy.
Your due diligence can start years before you ever meet the particular purchaser. So depends on what side of the fence you're on and your level of comfort. If you feel completely comfortable going through either a seller's books and feel that you understand the numbers and what the story is being told, then you may just want a lawyer to execute on the legalese of it. But I think there can be, depending on the price of the business too, I was very grateful to have all of the support that I did from my team.
Yeah, I have to agree. In terms of that, you don't know what you don't know, right? And because the lawyers are trained to do that work and you know, unearth all of those little pieces that may come back to haunt you. I just felt really, really comfortable knowing that he was going to take care of those details for me, and then I wouldn't need to. I could just focus on starting my business and going from there.
Yeah, I would say just in general, don't be afraid to spend the money on good advisors who are going to help you. You know, that advice you get from a professional can save you a lot of money down the road. So, you know, have a budget for advisors, and the amount, you know, you might get another quote from a different advisor, but make sure that it's people, your advisors are people that you feel you can talk with candidly and openly, and they're going to give you advice that you're comfortable following. It's really key to the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
May I jump in there?
Sure, Deborah.
So I'm a chartered professional accountant, and so I deal with this from the accounting side. And I can say up and down, they are worth their weight in gold. I have a client that I've taken on, and they didn't use a lawyer, or at least they didn't understand what their lawyer was saying. It was before I took them on. They ended up with a second corporation. They bought both of them and didn't even know there was a second corporation that was holding the actual asset of the building that they purchased. They thought they had one corporation. I have another one that the purchase fell through because during the discovery that the lawyer was doing, or whatever their technical term is for it, they found out that there was an open building permit from 50 years ago. And so the business couldn't sell until it could be closed. So you cannot guarantee that it will save you money in the long run, but you definitely don't want to risk the massive potential consequences if you are not willing to spend the money. And if your first question is, you know, how much is it going to cost? And I don't know if I can afford that. Take a step back and be sure that you want to get into the process, because you are better off to spend the money and not even buy the business than to wish-wash around whether or not to pay the advisors. And if you can't afford to know you can lose that money without actually acquiring a business, you're probably not in the right position financially at this point to start.
Yeah, great comments. It's those hidden things. You don't know what you don't know, and so save you a lot of trouble. Yeah. Okay, we're running close to time. Yeah, the importance of location, you know, and an example that Olga gives is the wood coop on Granville Island didn't survive without their location. So you may buy a business, but if you don't get the location, it may not survive. And a question here, how do you navigate buying a business if the seller has a firm timeline for when they are retiring, moving away? The buyer could speed up their purchase and have more support from the owner. Otherwise, the help would be minimal when transitioning. So the seller has a firm timeline. Any comments there?
That I just think, like, you know, we talked about the holdback there, right? Because there's certain aspects of the business that the seller is going to know quite intimately, and you will need a little bit of their help. And I think that the holdback can entice them to be present until the final payout is made, and to help you transition into business ownership, you know, in a really meaningful way. I might be a little bit skeptical, or I don't know, my spidey sense would be tingling if the timeline is so firm that you know, you've got to cut and run and you can't be here. Why can't you stay a minute and help me through this kind of thing? So that's just my thought.
When I hear that, I think the business is for sale, on sale. Like if the seller has those kind of requirements, and the risk is higher for the purchaser, the price better come down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You better be getting a good deal.
Well, and don't be afraid to walk away.
Yeah.
So we're right at time. I got a few other slides I need to do, but Tandy and Pauline, thank you so much. Do you have any final words of wisdom for those looking to buy an existing business?
Yeah. I think I might just say that it's important to do your due diligence. It is important to answer all of your questions, but remember that there's an element of, you know, imagination, intuition, and I view the due diligence as the intelligence portion, right? So just if you have that desire to wade into entrepreneurship, follow it, as long as you do so safely and you're well advised. I think it can be very rewarding.
Great advice. And Pauline?
Women, we know this, that women tend to be more debt adverse.
Yeah.
So when you are looking at purchasing, take a look, and perhaps you need that business advisor again, but look at what that debt can achieve. So if you leverage debt, what's it going to return to you? What's the ROI on it? And I think it's important not to be super afraid of debt, to make sure that you understand it's a tool that can be, in some cases, very helpful.
Yeah, great place to leave it. So thank you so much to our panelists, Tandy and Pauline, just amazing insights. And also thank you to the others who joined on the call and the professionals who provided your insights and tips as well. We really appreciate those. It's a community here supporting women entrepreneurs to buy businesses. So thank you, Tandy and Pauline. And I think we have some great sessions coming up. Strong and impactful leadership practices for women business owners. I mean, just here we feel the power of the community and the team being together, and the leadership. The facilitators on the leadership program are just outstanding. So I encourage you to look at that one. And also, as a growth strategy, selling outside of BC, how to export services. So this session on October 13th focuses specifically on services and selling your services outside of BC. Usually the focus is on products, but if you have a service-based business, you can also sell outside BC. And we have an experienced business owner who has done exactly that on the panel, as well as some other expert panelists. So thank you all. Andrea, I saw you. Did you have your hand up? Was there a question you wanted to pop in? Yeah. Andrea.
It's just about I was clapping as in thank you.
Oh, we so appreciate that. Thank you.
That was about how to, like, a website for finding businesses for sale. And what I was,
There is a slide in the deck that will come out in the email afterwards. So there's just a list there of just some sample places. So on this final slide, thank you for joining us. Please connect in with us through our email at hello@WeBC, or find us on social media and let us know how we can support you on your entrepreneurial journey. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. And please fill out the survey before you go. Thank you so much.